Welcome to Come and See, your podcast for finding truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by Living Waters Abide Ministries. With host and founder, Richard Case, and co-host and retreat leader, Kathy Ricconi. Jesus reminds us to watch for the signs of his return. Today, we will explore further what we are seeing in our times that line up with what signs he said would indicate the potential of the end and his return. We will also discuss the practical meaning of this as we watch and as a remnant prepare as he so leads. And now your host, Richard Case.
Well, good morning, everybody. This is End Times Friday, and we have our very special guest, Eric and Rabbi Ephraim from Israel, and Denny, and good friends at Denny's. And Denny keeps helping us with all this, and we thank you so much, you guys. First of all, I'd like to just have you share a little bit about what's going on in your life right now. Eric, your family's expanding quite a bit, so tell us about that, and then
my family's still smaller than Ephraim's, but
okay.
Yeah, it's Ephraim. So my youngest daughter, who lives in Los Angeles, gave birth about a little more than a week ago, and so I just arrived in LA this morning from Israel via London, and there'll be a Brit Milah. This is the circumcision of the male child, part of the covenant with God that was made by Abraham Avinu many centuries ago. So he'll be undergoing this procedure at 9 o'clock Pacific time. So I appreciate you having the call a little bit earlier. And then my nephew, who lives in St. Louis, his wife will be giving birth in about 4 or 5 days. And so I think they're going to name the child after my sister, who passed away many years ago. So I'll be heading out there to visit with my nephew and his wife.
Now, when you have the ceremony, who comes to the ceremony, and what exactly do you do during the ceremony?
Oh, there's a specially trained individual. Sometimes, especially in the United States, it's often a doctor. It doesn't have to be, but especially trained in the circumcision procedure itself. And there are certain.
That's good that they know what they're doing.
Yeah. There's an individual called the sandak, which is often a grandfather or of the newborn, or it could be a special relative of the couple, who holds the baby during the procedure. And often that person's allowed to bestow special blessings on anybody there, because they're, in these kinds of occasions, they're in direct communication with the Lord above. And so there'll be a set of, prayers said, and then the procedure will be done. And then there'll be, it's a celebratory event. So there'll be probably some food and people, so I've been asked, I'm a Kohen, so I've been asked to do the blessing, the Kohen blessing over the newborn, and then say some other blessings. So I'll be participating at that level.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, welcome to America, and your joy of being part of that. And then Rabbi, you were sharing about you went on a bike ride at a place that has historical meaning for all of us, actually. So tell us where you went and what the historical meaning of that place was.
Okay, sure. This is just part of the fun and excitement of living in the land of Israel. It's because I was just out for a bike ride with my 12-year-old son. We're right now vacationing. It's the Passover holiday, so we're on holiday in a city called Ashkelon, which is in the south of Israel on the coast. It's actually the biggest city just north of Gaza. So we went into the nature reserve, and one of the things that you see there is the gate, the arched gateway that was the entrance to the city as part of the walls and the gates and the towers of fortifying the Canaanite city, which was built about 1800 BCE. Which is the time of Abraham. So there's good chance that Abraham visited the city and walked through this gate. And it happens to be that this arched gate is the oldest gateway that has been found in any city in the world. There's another one that's almost the same age up in the north of Israel, but they're the oldest found anywhere. So it's really cool. And I actually took a video of my son biking through this 3,800-year-old ancient gateway. It's cool to be walking where Abraham walked.
Yeah, it must have been very exciting. That's interesting. Well, we're obviously really interested in what's happening over there. From what, where we see it, and we don't know much, is that, a little bit in Gaza, a little bit in Lebanon with Hezbollah, and some big thing being planned for Iran. So bring us up to date on where is everything in these locations, what's happening, and then we'll just keep pursuing, try to understand it.
Well, maybe starting in reverse order, Iran. The prime minister was invited by President Trump to visit, I guess it was, a week and a half ago, and to Washington. He thought the meeting was going to be about tariffs and some other related things, but the main topic, main purpose for his invitation was so President Trump could brief him that there was going to be direct discussions, negotiations with Iran over a nuclear, I'm not sure what you call a deal, and a lifting of the sanctions against the Islamic State. And since that time, my guess is this has been covered in the U.S. press. There was a meeting between his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and a very brief meeting with the foreign minister from Iran. And by Iranian insistence, the negotiations then went indirect. So rather than sitting and talking through interpreters, they were required to sit in separate rooms and exchange messages. Why Iran insists on this bizarre way of doing things is, I guess, there are no diplomatic relations between the two countries. A lot of things that happen between messaging that gets through the Swiss embassy in Iran. Well, maybe this is related, I don't know. So everyone seemed optimistic after the first meeting, according to the pronouncements by the foreign minister of Oman. The first meeting was held in the capital of Oman, Muscat, I'm not sure how it's pronounced. And it was there because Oman maintains strong relations with both the West as well as with Iran. And so it seemed like a neutral territory. So people seemed to walk out of the meeting. People were making statements, especially the foreign minister of Oman, very optimistic. And it seems from reading the press now that things aren't so rosy as people portrayed them in the beginning. There's still some significant differences. Special Emissary Witkoff made it clear, at least recently in the newspapers, that the U.S. position is that Iran must basically dismantle its nuclear capabilities and some kind of agreement that it will not militarize its nuclear program. And in exchange, Iran has now claimed that there's no way it's going to stop its enrichment program and ancillary things. So it's not clear how much of this is posturing, how much of this is real. How much of this is just, there's sort of a saying in the Middle East, particularly in Israel, is that I guess peace doesn't look as far, peace looks further away when you're discussing peace than when you're not. So, and I think, and this happens over and over again in Israel, when negotiations start happening in some regard between whoever's leading the Palestinians and the Israeli government at the time, all of a sudden violence picks up because everyone's trying to posture and do things. And so it's really hard to read between the lines. The Israeli perspective on this is that the whole nuclear program of Iran must be dismantled and destroyed. And not just this militarization, because they'll eventually get a missile, and you can't, the hard part is delivery of the bomb, and it's hard to distinguish between that and other uses of a missile. And it's not sure yet where, the U.S. administration really intends to compromise on. So no one really knows. Lots of concern in Israel. I have to say personally that what I don't understand, failed to understand from the U.S. administrations, is if I were in a position of authority on these negotiations, the first thing I would do is reach out to someone in the U.S. community from Iranian who can be a part of the negotiating team and helping read through the lines. Because when you're in the Middle East negotiating in a bazaar, it's very different from negotiating a contract between a labor union and management. They're two different worlds.
Yeah.
And what is said and what is said is equal. What is not said is equally as important as what is said. And no one understands better how people in this Islamic government are thinking in Iran than someone who lived there for a long period of time. And so I don't understand why they don't do that. They don't.
If I can add some comments on that, the relating to the negotiating style. Like in the Middle East, excluding Israel, Israel is more of a Western country, but the Arab countries around us, they know how to bargain. They know how to negotiate. They are the kings of it. They've been doing it for thousands of years, and they know how to, you know, when you see tourists going through the Arab market in Jerusalem, you just see America, just being taken advantage of and manipulated, whatever. And so we've been to this thing before. The Biden administration that entered into negotiations and made a deal, it was pretty obvious to us in Israel. They were just buying time, and then they were just ignoring, taking advantage, and the whole time they were just continuing the development of their nuclear program.
Right.
So they bought themselves years and years of, while they were supposedly cooperating with this agreement that was done, and they were just ignoring the whole thing and moving ahead. And so we're really worried that the same thing is going to happen again, although Trump certainly is, he's no pushover, but he's up against the Iranian regime, and who knows? And I don't know what his interests are and why he sort of flipped the switch to want to go towards negotiations. It's a big question mark, and what his red lines are. So we're all a little bit concerned, and no one really knows what's flying. And and by the way, I knew a person who was in the negotiating team for Israel during the Oslo peace process, and she sat on the Israeli team across the table in Camp David, negotiating with the Palestinian negotiators, the Palestinian team. And the Palestinian team, this is in the East, they told the Israelis to their face, we have no intention to keep what we are signing. This means nothing because you have no intention to keep it whatsoever. We'll draw it up. We'll sign a contract. We'll make this agreement, but we won't keep it, which is what they exactly proceeded to do. They made an agreement, and then they proceeded to not keep it. And then a couple years later, after they built up their arsenal of terrorists, they unleashed the second intifada and killed 1,000 Israelis over the next few years. Israel, in its Western mentality, and the United States along with it, sort of went along with saying, oh, they're just saying that. They don't really mean it. They really will keep it. And sort of there will be international pressure on them, and they'll be welcomed into the... So we make all these rationalizations of why they don't really mean what they're saying. We westernize their language, and I heard an expression, West cues, like we Western excuse what they have to say instead of just taking them for their word. So anyway, we have a lot of worries about the direction of negotiations.
Yeah, so talk about that, because as we've seen it actually all the way through your discussions about Gaza and Hezbollah and Iran, is they're not honorable. They deceive. We went into a pretty good discussion about evil. Evil is deception. Evil is not honoring what they say, and they don't. So let's go with, we understand that. We've understood that about Iran for sure. And if the United States winds up in this West Cuse approach, what do you see Israel going to do, their viewpoint of it all? Because their view of it, I know, is they can't allow that to ever be developed. What are they going to do? Are they going to just wait and see what happens? Are they going to go around it and just say, well, we're going to take care of it ourselves? What do you see happening from the Israeli point of view?
This is Eric. If you want prophecy, you have to talk to Eric.
I don't see Israel acting without some tacit understanding from the United States. And if the United States signs some form of a deal with the Islamic Republic, they're not going to be happy if Israel goes ahead and attacks anyway. So I don't... Iran still threatens that it's going to be, it thinks it owes Israel another missile barrage based upon the conflicts. That may still happen. And if that happens, then Israel will retaliate. And to the level to which Israel will retaliate will probably be somewhat coordinated with the Trump administration. Not totally, but at some level, because the kinds of ordnance that Israel needs to be able to take care of this problem is generally purchased from the United States. So Israel will walk very carefully.
Eric, do you think that the sense in the United States, at least among people that lean right, is that Trump has given the Israeli government an absolute free hand on anything it wants to do. There may be a triggering, as Ephraim said, there may be a red line that triggers it. But is there a sense that the control over those decisions that the previous administration had are no longer in place?
Yes and no. So when it comes to Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria, less extent Yemen, because now the United States is heavily involved in Yemen, but that there is large sort of green light, if you will, within certain limits, but nothing like what the Biden administration really put an entire embargo on arms shipments for a period of time on Israel and then denied it. But that's what happened. In the case of Iran, look, if the United States ends up in the middle of what it feels in the middle of reasonable negotiations, then it's not going to look kindly on Israel doing anything in particular against the Islamic Republic. And then if they sign something and then Israel goes ahead and does something anyway, the United States is going to be unhappy underestimating their reaction. They're going to be really pissed off. And I don't think
will that at that point, because I agree with what you just said. Therefore, will the administration, U.S. administration, invite Israel to that discussion and negotiation so that they are at least agreeing at whatever level and approach it kind of like they've done the other ones, which we'll get into in our second session about, with like Gaza, now they're in an observing mode where if Gaza, Hamas starts to make a move, they're gonna react to it, so that they would build that into the negotiation. Do you feel like the United States will invite Israel into that place so they're not just on the sidelines and going to have to live what the United States decides when it's not in the interest of Israel?
In short, no. I don't think the United States is going to invite Israel into any of the discussions or negotiations with Iran. What Iran wants out of this deal can only be given by the United States and not by Israel. And Iran is never going to even indirectly negotiate with Israel in any respect. Its only relationship with Israel is to see its destruction. That's all Iran is, the Islamic Republic of Iran. By the way, I keep using the Islamic Republic because the population of Iran is totally different. I mean, there were reports even in the New York Times prior to these negotiations starting that there were advisors advising the supreme leader that if they didn't enter any kind of discussions or negotiations with the United States, and there was an attack that destroyed the nuclear facilities in Iran, that there was a reasonable chance that the population would rise up and in a more forceful way than they have in the past, possibly to the extent that they would unseat the ruling authority. Yeah. So I try to distinguish between the Iranian people through which there historically have been very good relations with the state of Israel, but it changed with the Islamic State. So in short, I don't think the United States is going to be consulting Israel at all on any of this. I just hope that they consult somebody who understands negotiating in the Middle East and the bazaar that can help them guide them through, what Iran says and does and how real it is, because that hasn't happened in the past. And it would benefit the United States greatly to have that understanding and nuances on reading between the lines and what's really going on. It's not, as Ephraim put it, is not really well understood to the Western mind. I mean, he's right. I mean, I've been in the Arab Bazaar with, actually, I was dating a girl this is many, many years ago. She was a Jew from Iraqi extraction and lived in Iran. And so they were in the Arab Bazaar. And I just saw them negotiating with the Arab merchants there. And it was an eye-opener to see just how the whole process unfolds and how they got what they wanted at the price they wanted, whereas any American would have paid 3 or 4 times what they paid. Yeah. It was
On the you said the Islamic Republic versus the Iranian people. What's the percent breakdown between the two in Iran?
I look, it's an authoritarian regime that has that exercises its power in a very ruthless way by visiting its opposition and killing them and torturing them, including women who have been often the leaders of these revolts that have been taking place in the streets of Iran over the years. So I don't know what percentage of the population breaks down, but all the polling suggests that the bulk of the population does not support. Look, they have no water. This is a country incredibly rich in natural resources. It's a beautiful country, and they have no water at the moment because it was totally mismanaged. And so they have no farms. It's a country which produces and exports oil yet they have power outages every day for most of the day. And the population knows all this. And so how can they view themselves as ruling competently when all this is going on?
Rabbi, from the Israeli population, what's their view right now toward what's happening with these negotiations, and what would they like your government to do?
I think there's a huge amount of confusion. This just came out, sort of blindsided us. I think even blindsided Bibi and the leadership. They didn't expect negotiation. They were sort of gearing up, I think, to an American-supported military attack on their nuclear capabilities, and then suddenly this comes out, and it just creates a lot of questions. There's not a lot of confidence at all that our interests will be taken into account to the extent that they need to be from a regime which wants to destroy us and is actively seeking, and not too far away from getting an atomic bomb, and they will have no hesitation to use it against us if they get it. We've seen that in the Islamic world, when they say they want to destroy something like the West, like Israel, they mean it. They really mean it. And they don't have Western sensitivities of, well, it's not right to kill hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. They just do not have that. October 7th, certainly brought that home to every Israeli if we didn't know it before, which we should have. So there's a lot of worry and concern about where it will go. On the other hand, we always hold out a little bit of hope, because if they really negotiate hard and insist on all the nuclear facilities being blown up, like apparently did happen in Libya, I'm not that familiar with history, but I think that was how it happened in Libya. It could be good. We just want them not to have nuclear capabilities, but we're relying on another country.
Yeah.
And that hasn't boded well for us in the past.
Yeah. Well, we're through with our time this time, but we'll pick this up, come back. I know, Denny, you got a couple questions, and I do too, and we'd like to play out with you two a couple of scenarios then, because it looks like, it can go one way or another way. And, Israel is the one. I mean, it's funny to me, and it's not hilariously funny. It's just interesting. This is all about Israel. And if Israel's not at the table and somebody's negotiating something that's all about them, they've got to have a different perspective about that, because they're the ones that are literally in a position where they can be affected by this directly. So we want to talk about that. So thank you guys so much for giving us this input. And it is quite different understanding, which I think this next session we get into will help us understand at least what the possibilities are and where might it go, and then we'll watch it together. And then I know, Denny, you've got a couple questions you'd like to ask. So thank everybody for joining us. We're so privileged to have Eric and Rabbi with us once a month to give us this terrific input, and we bless you, Eric, with your family and the celebration of the covenant today. And it's kind of a cool thing, Rabbi, that you were drove through an arch that's 1,000 years old. I mean, it's like amazing, and I would love to do that with you someday. So Kathy, we'll end this and go to the next one.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us, everyone. If you have any questions, send them in to us at questions@abideministries.com, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Yep, see you then.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Come and See, your podcast for truth in a world of chaos. Brought to you by Living Waters Abide Ministries. Send us your questions and comments, and tune in tomorrow for more answers to your personal questions about living life in God's truth. Remember, God's will is best and none better. His truth brings peace in this world of chaos.